And the first person to speak to us tonight is Angela Ashawasegai. Angela is Ojibwe. She's from Envy Inlet First Nation. And now she's a mental health advocate, a writer, a poet, a blogger, an entrepreneur. So I could tell you she's come a long way. She's currently getting more and more involved in society and our community. She's a chair at the Aboriginal Professional Network. And she is writing her first nonfiction book about her 60s school experience. So please welcome Angela Ashawasegai.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone who's come to be here tonight. And especially thank you to Colleen Cardinal. So I'm going to begin by sharing what some of the trauma and post-traumatic stress injuries I've had to deal with. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about my healing journey. And then I'm going to tell you about the hope that I have for the future. So my story begins when I was scooped away from my birth mother. My birth mother, she was very young when she had me. She was, I believe she was 17 years old. That's very young to have a child. And she was, well, I was told that the child welfare Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, so I was scooped away at birth, and I never got to meet my birth mother. And right away, I ended up being put into foster care at birth, and I ended up in different foster homes for the first year of my life. I got bumped around, and until I ended up being adopted at the age of 1 year old. And in this family that I ended up in a non-Indigenous family, and it was a very big family. And this family was quite dysfunctional. And I didn't know it at the time, but everything that was happening to me it was terrifying. It was, you know, but it was normal because I didn't know anything else because I was little. I was enduring violence physically, mentally, and even sexually. And that was very, very hard. I couldn't talk to anyone what was happening to me. I just lived my life as if I just didn't know who I could talk to. I would just, you know, I would just forget everything that happened, and that was just my way. I was very uncomfortable. So later on, when I became a teenager, well, first time I ran away, I was age 10, and then I ran away again at age 16. And those times of running away was my way of just realizing that there's something wrong. There's something wrong with my life, and I need to be safe. And I sure didn't feel safe in my home. So some of the intergenerational impacts that I ended up living with after I left home was I struggled with depression, with nightmares, anxiety and self-destructive behaviors. And again, I was in such a shock state that I wasn't able to tell anybody how I was feeling. I was just acting in this weird way, and just didn't know how to cope with all the feelings that I had stuffed away. So it was very hard for me to articulate those feelings. The other thing that I found was that I didn't fit in anywhere after I left home, my so-called home. I found out I belonged to Henviel First Nations, and sadly, my connection with my birth family is virtually non-existent. I have a terrible time feeling like I belong anywhere. And that's one of the sad realities of being a 60s group survivor is that I've come to understand that the only place that I feel at home is in my own heart. And that's where I've built my home. My healing journey has been quite fragmented. I found bits and pieces of my cultural identity over time, and I found it difficult to hand down any sense of cultural identity to my children. So I have 3 children, and those 3 children, I did the best I could. I mean, I did take them to powwows, and I took them to ceremonies that I went in, and I just feel like I failed. I feel like I wish I could have given them more. I wish I could teach them more. I wish that, because I know that they don't really relate too much to the Aboriginal part of my identity. So another part of my healing journey has been to rebuild my life from rock bottom. I hit rock bottom in 2009. And I was a very painful time for me because I had just gave up on everything that had happened to me. So I'll tell you a bit about the hope, and the future for me is quite bright. I'm working on my very first nonfiction book. And it's all about breaking the silence of trauma, mental illness, and PTSD. I'm also a mental health advocate. I stand strongly against ending the stigma of mental illness because that's one of the biggest challenges I faced as a PTSD survivor and as a 60s group survivor. That was one of the most painful things, was trying to move forward in my life when everyone around me was just telling me to get over it. Just get over it, you know? So you just don't get over things like that. You don't get over losing your identity. You don't get over being sexually abused and physically beaten for your entire childhood. You don't get over that easily. So I stand strongly on that issue, and I'm going to do everything I can to bring about the change in the mental health care system so that other people can heal without feeling like that there's something wrong with you if you have a mental illness, a depression, or you have PTSD. No one should be feeling like they can't talk about it. I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm working on my career as a professional speaker, and my expertise is adversity, no surprise there. And I'm also a motivational speaker, so I work on sharing how I was able to turn my life around from tragedy to triumph. And I want to inspire people that there is hope, that you don't have to feel alone. And I did it. I turned my life around. I was all alone. I didn't have anyone supporting me, but I did it. So good for me, yay. I'm also a workshop facilitator. So one of my favorite things is women's issues. I also feel strongly about building self-esteem for women, and I also like to help women develop personally and professionally. So those are the things that I love doing. And so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Am I doing okay for time, Robert Living?
The poem.
The poem? Okay. I have some poems. I'm also a poet. Oh my God. So the first poem that I'm going to share, it's titled Colonialism. I wrote this poem last August, and I just decided that I needed to stand up to my oppressor. I got to stand up and talk to them like they're a person. So here's what I wrote. Colonialism. You took away my mother. You took away my culture. You wanted to pave the road with good intentions for me, but did you really? You crumbled my identity and you almost destroyed my destiny. I became lost. I became mentally ill. Colonialism, can't you see what you've done to me? It's been a hellish tragedy. I can still see and feel the many lingering wounded spirits of my 60s scoop brothers and sisters. But I hold on to hope for peace and reconciliation for those still lost. Colonialism. I dare you to walk into my moccasins for a while. Maybe you'll soon see what I mean. No, don't tell me to get over it. No, don't deceive me anymore with your lies. No, don't tell me you're sorry, because you're not. Colonialism. Someday I may forgive you, but I will never forget you. It felt good writing that. I got that off my chest. So I have another poem, and I titled it To Give Up or Not to Give Up. It was really, I wrote this poem March 2013. To give up or not to give up? That is the question. After you've survived 15 years of child abuse, sexual, physical, and mental trauma, remember how you grasped tightly onto your life, your will to survive. Your voice was like a whisper, but you didn't dare give up. To give up or not to give up, that is the question. After you've survived 30 years, suffering mental illness, PTSD, depression, and suicide attempts, remember the progress you've made to restore some wellness. Your voice became a little stronger. You were determined not to give up. To give up or not to give up? That is the question. After you've survived 12 years of employment within toxic workplaces, lateral violence, toxic coworkers, and bad management, remember how you stood up for your employee rights, but yet your voice fell on deaf ears. To give up or not to give up? That is the question. After surviving in a power-monger world, the negative energy accumulates, quashing all of your strength. Wondering, after all the education, after all of the job placements, and after all of your social injustice quests, it's all just been a terrible waste. You finally decide, yes, it is time to give up. Sometimes life doesn't give up on us. Sometimes life gives you hope, and hope comes calling or knocking at the door. The courage to soar called, and you answered, bringing new beginnings, renewed confidence, moving forward once again. Now a volunteer co-chair of APN Executive, one step forward. Now a blogger of Native Angel Voice, another leap forward. Now writing a non-fiction book, the biggest step forward ever. Now a professional public speaker, wow. Now a mental health advocate, stop the presses. To give up or not to give up is no longer the question.